One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. What are senior notes? We'll find out today on Investment Banking Insights. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. This is the only show dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and non-technical aspects of the investment banking process. My name is Alex Mason and I am your host. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, let's go ahead and get into it. We're talking about different types of debt. And this applies not just to the context of LBOs, but also more generally about how companies borrow money, which can be very important for us as investment bankers, understanding how to allocate capital and help businesses raise funds. So we talked so far about revolvers. We've talked about term loans as possible types of debt that a company can issue. Now let's get into some of the other less common debt types, starting with senior notes. Now, senior notes, while still senior, they're a little bit lower on the capital structure than revolvers or term loans. And this type of debt typically has interest rates that are a little bit higher as a result. So revolvers and term loans, you're going to get the lowest rates. Now we're going to start getting into higher rate territory because there typically is a little bit more risk with these types of instruments. So based on how the company is lending. So the benefit for companies that are borrowing this type of debt is that the interest is fixed. Now recall that when we talked about revolvers and term loans, those types of debt have floating interest rates, which can be a risk in an inflationary environment. But with a fixed rate of interest, the company borrowing the money knows that they're going to have this set interest costs over the life of the loan. And so that's when senior notes are potentially attractive. And to make this a little bit realistic for you, I went ahead and found a recent example of a company that issued senior notes. And this was not for LBO purposes, but it could be for a different scenario. So I found this company called Brinker International. And you may have never heard of them, but if you live in the United States, there's a decent chance you've interacted with them at some point because they own these iconic American restaurant chains, such as Chili's and Maggiano's Little Italy. So they have these restaurants all over the place. But what I wanted to do is share with you some information from a press release that I found, which was dated June 22nd, 2023. And here's what it says. Brinker International, ticker symbol EAT, today announced that it has priced its previously announced private notes offering and has agreed to issue and sell $350 million in aggregate principal amount of 8.25% senior unsecured notes due 2030. The notes were sold to eligible purchasers at 100% of the principal amounts. The notes will be guaranteed on a senior unsecured basis by each of the company's subsidiaries that guarantee its revolving credit facility. Net proceeds from the offering of the notes will be used to repay a portion of the outstanding indebtedness under the company's revolving credit facility. The closing of the notes offering is scheduled to occur on June 27, 2023, subject to customary closing conditions, end quote. Okay, so that's a lot of legal jargon and like very specific language. But what does that mean? Basically, this company Brinker is refinancing in order to pay off some existing debt. And the terms that they're doing that under are that they're raising $350 million and they're doing it at an 8.25% interest rate. And the duration of the loan is 7 years because it ends and is due in 2030. This announcement was made in 2023, so that's a 7-year difference. That's basically what's going on. And it's just interesting to see, like, this is a real life example of a company raising money with this specific type of debt. Now, that last piece, duration, we said that this loan was for 7 years. That brings us to the duration of these senior notes. Now, the duration or tenor of the senior notes is also different from revolvers or term loans. Senior notes typically have 7 to 10 years in duration, so it's a little bit longer than some other types of debt. And if we look at other characteristics, they're also different. Amortization is also different. Instead of having a straight line amortization like a term A loan or amortizing a small percentage of the loan every year like a term B loan, with senior notes, you have what is known as a bullet. Now, what does that mean, bullet? That means that the principal is paid in one quick payment at the end of the life cycle of the loan. And just the way that I remember this personally is the payment is quick, like a bullet. So that's how I think about it. Now, with this type of debt, lenders do have call protection. And remember from other episodes, this means that the borrowing company can't prepay the principal ahead of time, or at least they can't do so without paying extra fees. Another thing to know about this type of debt is that sometimes it's secured, sometimes it isn't. I mean, in the example that I just gave with Brinker, it was unsecured debt. And so remember that for a debt to be secured, it means that it has assets backing it that can be sold to help pay off that debt. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to note about this type of debt is how covenants are treated. So unlike revolvers or term loans, senior notes have what's called incurrence covenants. So incurrence covenants are different from maintenance covenants. This ties the company's ability to raise additional debt to their financial performance. So if you remember, with maintenance covenants, the company just has to maintain a certain level of performance, like some kind of leverage ratio below a certain number or something like that. But with incurrence covenants, they can go over that threshold technically, but they just can't raise any more debt if they're over that threshold. So it's kind of like, yeah, you can have your leverage ratio be really high, but don't expect to borrow any money from us because we won't let you. So that's kind of a little slight wrinkle in the difference between incurrence covenants and maintenance covenants. So that's senior debt, senior notes. I hope you enjoyed this episode. My name is Alex Mason from Investment Banking Insights. Thank you for connecting with me, for rating the show, for sharing it with your friends. I really appreciate it. Some of y'all, I know y'all are driving back from New York or driving to New York, having this thing on repeat. So much love to y'all. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And I'll see you next time.